First, let's talk about kind of your abbreviated introduction into innovative weather. What kind of led you to innovative weather, to the idea with Paul?
Yeah.
And how was that those first 6 months to a year? How did that feel? How did that go?
Yeah. I was working in private sector and kind of thinking that I might want to change a little bit. And so what I did, a lot of broadcasting, also some utility forecasting, but I was a director of operations for that company for a little while. So I'd learned a lot. And Paul had, there was a question that came from a potential partner. It never really went anywhere, but it did lead us to a couple of introductions. And Paul and I had talked about this idea that so many of our students, they want a meteorological education, they typically have to have part-time jobs, and most weather jobs required 1 to 2 years of experience. Well, how are you going to get that? And so what if you could combine all of those into a paid weather internship that would allow students to be able to get all three of those things? So I had another contact. We went back to We Energies with a little different conversation, and also the support of the university from Dean Richard Meadows. And that conversation actually started the whole thing. Dave Magna and John Morose and a few others at We Energies said, we're willing to give you a 6-month trial paid. That was enough for the university to say, okay, let's give this a shot. And then we set benchmarks on, could we invite more partners into the mix? And over that course of that first year, I think we had about 7 or 8 partners that came on board to give it a shot with the idea of helping college students get a better experience, but they got a more customized forecast. And so we were trying to find a way to create value for the university, for the student, for the partner, and for the community. And we needed people to step up and do it, and they did.
Awesome. So talking about culture, you fostered the culture, and where did the ideas of servant leadership really come to you? And how were you able to facilitate that culture and really establish that in such a foundational format for innovative weather?
I'll go back a little bit further, even to the high school version, Mike, where I wanted to play high school basketball. I got cut my freshman year. I got cut my sophomore year as the last guy cut. In those years, I wound up coaching with my dad. And my dad had a real care and concern for, especially we were coaching boys basketball, especially for the kids who didn't have a strong home life. And so we would spend a lot of time talking about how can we help these kids? So like the seeds of a lot of stuff got planted in the teenage version of me. And then as I got a chance to grow up, I did a lot of coaching and building community and finding a way to move forward on a vision. So a lot of that was already in my DNA as we came here. That first group of students, Paul and I pitched the idea to them, juniors, seniors, and graduate students, and their willingness to take this crazy ride and give this a shot, spin it up from nothing, but the promise of, if this works, you guys are going to have a great story. Their commitment, their enthusiasm, their honestly pushback, sometimes on me, because I was coming in maybe guns blazing or a little too fast and not understanding their life. I don't have a graduate degree, so for the graduate students, I didn't quite understand their world. And so for some of them to be willing to push back on me and let me be able to push back on them, we learned together. And so some of the things I had seen in my previous life all of a sudden had a whole other picture, and it all came out of that first group. So the idea of servant leadership, can you be humble enough to learn? We were not going to make it if we didn't listen to each other, if we didn't try to find the value in what the other person was saying and trust each other. So humble enough to learn and yet confident enough to lead. I still have to put my name on this forecast. It's my email. It's going to get sent out. And can I offer protection for them when they have a bad day? Can I praise them? Can they be able to go beyond what I'm asking them to do and really help each other? It was amazing. So that first group set such a strong foundation that became a lot of the principles that I was able to give voice to over the years and make it more and more our own. So the culture of servant leadership came from our very earliest days, and it really came from humility to listen and learn, but then confidence to take the chance and to do the work.
Awesome. While you've been talking, I'm going to pull this camera out to get a second angle.
Sure.
So I think next we'll go into the main four, and the first one being telling us about how, let me get this set up and then I'll ask you the question.
Yeah. No, I'm paranoid. Are you still recording? Yes, you are.
Let me show you. Do you feel like you have a spot if I were to slide sideways? You have a spot you can look at?
Yeah, I know what I'm looking at, yeah.
Cool. So tell us about the first question. How has your time in innovative weather impacted your life? Especially over the 17 years, how has that been an impact?
Boy, I would say that, my first weather job really helped me get the experiences of being an adult. In many ways, innovative weather, the work with our partners, the work with Paul, the university, our students, that really helped me become a professional, an adult, somebody who sees the world in a bigger way. Innovative weather has just shaped so much of my life. And again, it's through these relationships, the hard conversations, the celebrations, the way that our students just poured in, the ways that we learned culture, just the idea of culture enabling or inhibiting vision, that came out of this because we saw time and again, we worked when my corporate world didn't. This worked. Why? And we really were able to find and pull some really great things. And they made me, quite frankly, they made me a better husband. They made me a better dad. It helped my family because of the way that we grew together and the vision that we had to help students, but and not only giving them an opportunity, but then to ask them to grow up and help me. Like I couldn't take a family vacation without them. If my kids got sick, I couldn't go and be there for my family unless we had students willing to be able to say, I'm going to help Mike. That kind of commitment to each other, man, that is life-shaping. And I have taken that into every other organization that I lead, and I lead several. Every team has this DNA of how do we serve one another. It has changed my life in many ways for the better. Sure.
So how has it really impacted the career, especially, I suppose, getting into innovative weather, but also moving away from innovative weather?
Yeah. Probably one of the neatest things that has come out of my career professionally with innovative weather is honestly the transition. I don't read a lot of books where the founding people, whether it's the president, CEO, COO, that they make really smooth transitions. Usually that's very rocky and things can change wholesale, including the entire vision. And so what does it feel like for me, the guy who was in the fire and built it from scratch with Paul, handing it off to somebody else? What is that like? And so professionally, you don't go to school for that. There are very few experiences you get an opportunity to do that. And to have it happen the way it did, with Paul asking me to remain on since I had a lot of the relationships and Alex needed that time to spin up, and then to go through COVID together, but Alex's ability to be humble enough to learn and confident enough to lead. And for me, I had to be humble enough to say, Alex has set up a boundary, and if I don't agree with it, but I don't have a really strong reason that's critical to the operation, I can't and won't go there. So for me to have to practice that kind of restraint, again, professionally, I now play into the world that I live in now, and I learn my role is to help the people above me be great at what they do, and which includes talking about their blind spots from time to time. But if they've got a vision, how can I best support it? And then for the people who are underneath me, how can I equip them with what they need so that they can be successful? that professional growth came because of innovative weather, specifically because of the transition.
Awesome. Now we'll move on to some fun. Tell me about a story of innovative weather, probably student related, but when you think about the impact of students or a fun story, what kind of comes to mind?
The one that, when we were talking about this, the story that came to mind where all of this came together, both kind of humor and partner and student growth and what we call the come to Jesus moments, the hard conversations, we call them difficult conversations. One great story, and I've got a number of them, but Nate Auping. Nate was still kind of new into it. He was early on operational, but Nate had the ability to talk around an answer. Like a lot of students, didn't want to be wrong, so sometimes wouldn't give a direct answer. And one of our partners, most of you guys will know Ryan Griebel and have worked with him before. Ryan is very blunt and he's very direct, and those two crossed paths. Ryan needed to make a decision. Nate wasn't as helpful as he wanted to be, and so Ryan kind of lit into him. And I had been working to try to get Nate to that next level, and I just couldn't figure out how to do it. And so Ryan just kind of blasted him. And about 5 minutes after that, he called me at home and just said, "Hey, I just want to let you know that I probably was a little bit too rough, but he wasn't giving me the answer, so I was pretty blunt and direct." And I said, "No worries, thanks. You probably helped me do something that I haven't been able to do for a while." And I called Nate in the office and I said, "Well, how are you doing?" And he's like, "I'd be fine if my knees weren't still shaking," which is kind of funny. And yet it is everything right about what we were doing. A place where students and young people could fail forward. They could be challenged because they could trust that I really care about them and that I want the best for them. And our partners want that for them, but they also need the product to be done and for those people to grow professionally. And so Nate, that story to me is the epitome of what it is that we were doing to try to help a person grow, not only professionally, but personally too. And Nate wasn't the same after that, for the better. He grew. And there's so many stories like that, that honestly, that cross between personal and professional development through hardship was probably one of the best things about our program.
Awesome. Fun one I'm kind of coming up with on the fly. Is there like one weather event that still sticks out? Like you've seen a lot. Is there one that's like, man, that was...
There are a couple, early on in our first year, and I'm trying to remember the operator's name. I can see his face and I forget his name. But Dave Magna had been promoted, so the new operations guy for We Energies came in. And in his first summer, he's working with a bunch of college students and this director, me. And we got into 3 consecutive weeks of almost nonstop severe weather. Like it was 2 days off and another system was coming through. And not just a cute little thunderstorm. Like we're talking Bo Echo after supercell, after general thunderstorms, and even a lake breeze. We had a lake breeze kick off, like major lightning activity. And we got to the end of that one, and everybody was so burnt out that I think I called him up, and he said, "What now?" He didn't even ask me. He just said, "What now?" It's like, I know you're calling me to tell me I've got some more bad news. We need to be done with this. When is this going to be over? What now? And everybody in the office was like, if this is like what the weather is going to be like, I don't think I want to do this anymore. Because it was all fun and games the first week, but by the third week we're like, please, high pressure from Canada, somebody send it. So that was from a weather standpoint. What now? Was fantastic.
Wonderful. Okay, I think the last is anything you want to say, any other questions you want me to ask you, but anything you want to bring up?
Yeah. One of the things I'm most proud of, in fact, it's the thing I'm most proud of about innovative weather and how this all came to be and how we got to here, is that we're finishing the way we promised to start. Paul Rober and I were in a meeting with another dean in the college, and they were encouraging us to think about building this up with a few more clients and then spinning it off into a public forecast entity out of the university. And we pushed back against that a little bit, and as Paul and I were walking out of that and through the hallway, we said, would you want to do this if we did that? And I said, no. You? No. Because if we had spun it off, we would lose the focus, which was the student benefit. And so we said, we want to create value for the university, we do, but we want to recreate it for the student by working with real partners, not clients, real partners. And if we did those three things, the community would benefit. And for 17 years, the students coming in have never lost sight of that vision. The leaders have never lost sight of that. And it's one of the rare, again, opportunities. It's sad that we have to close, but we're closing on our terms with the way that we started. That first group that said, we'll do it, I'm looking at some of these kids right here who are carrying that same intense desire to do this well with the same mission mindset. Very few companies get to end that way, and we do. So I'm most proud of the way that we started, and we saw it all the way through, and that the students, the leaders, made sure that the vision that we had at the very beginning was the vision that we finished with.